Alright guys, not sure how I feel. I will figure it out though, but this is the last chapter. After this, there's the appendix, and there's basically the glossary techniques, task mapping, as well as an appendix here basically, right? It's just basically, I don't know, they're describing everything or putting everything next to each other. I don't care for that. I don't care to have this conversation with you guys. But the business process management perspective. Earlier I threw in a theory behind, like, the agile perspective is when we're working. The business intelligence perspective is basically what we're gathering. The information technology perspective is how. The business architecture perspective is kind of like, as well, like what we're the design behind it and the flow behind it. And the process is kind of like how things kind of follow each other. Or at the very least, that's my theory. So for now, let's see if that kind of like works or not and how relevant it is. The business process management perspective highlights the unique characteristic of business analysis when practiced in the context of developing or improving business processes. BPM is a management discipline that is set to enable technologies that focus on how organizations perform work to deliver value across how they perform work, yes. It aims for a view of the value delivery that spans the entire organization, views the organization through a process-centric lens. A BPM initiative delivers value by implementing improvements in the way work performed in an organization. BPM determines how manual and automated processes are created, modified, cancelled, and governed. Because you get to see friction, right? Like, this is happening and this is not working on, didn't reach that place. By doing it this way, you kind of like see the connections between the stakeholders and whatever basically is connected. Whatever is connected or whatever connects. Whatever. It's an ongoing effort and an internal part of the ongoing management of the operation of organizations. That kind of says it simply, like, it's a process. That's it. Now, can you hear me? Let's do this. Change scope. Oh, somebody died? Shame. Business analysts working with a BPM discipline may address a single process with limited scope and the address of the processes in the organization. Business analysts frequently focus on how the processes of an organization can be changed in order to improve and meet the objectives of the organization. BPM life cycles generally include the following activities: designing and the identification of process and definition of their current state. To design, you need to know what is going on right now. You identify them, you determine how to get to the future state. And then the gap between these states may be used to specify stakeholders' expectations and how businesses should be run. Or strategy is created. Modeling is the graphical representation of the process that documents the process, as well as comparing current state as is, the future state to be displayed, and the BPM lifecycle provide input to requirements and solution design specifications, as well as analyzing their potential value. Simulation may be quantitative data. All right, so I don't want to be reading it this way. Graphical representation of the process that documents the process, as well as comparing current state and future state to be. This phase of the BPM lifecycle provides input to requirements and solution design specifications in the modeling part, right? So, as well as analyzing their potential value. Simulation may be quantitative data so that the potential value of variations on the process can be analyzed and compared. So you simulate basically. With this process, you kind of like discover where it starts or where it wants to go. And you kind of like see what's required, what are the requirements for the solution, or what kind of solution would work, and that you're modeling it, right? And then there's execution and monitoring, which means basically you're providing the same type of input as modeling, but in terms of actual execution of the process. So you're testing more, right? And the data collected as a result is the actual business process flow, and is more reliable than the model. and objective, which makes it a strong asset. It's more objective. It's not I assume, right? Well, from the model. And then after that, you optimize. The act of ongoing repetition with the iteration of the previous phases and results, businesses, execution are monitoring, utilized, and modify models. So you go back to the model, you kind of modify it, and then you execute and you monitor, and then you go back to optimizing. So the designing part is literally like everything you have in mind, because ultimately, where do I want to go and where do I want to be? And then you model something around it, and then you execute to test it, and then you optimize to see like how you can do it better. Optimization of processes is also a good way to demonstrate the value of a suggested solution modification and justify process and product improvement initiatives. What's the breadth of change? The goal of the BPM is to ensure that value delivery is optimized across end-to-end processes. A comprehensive BPM initiative can span the entire enterprise. Maybe, well, it depends, exactly, it can. Can make an organization become more process-centric by providing insights to its processes, and organization's processes define what the organization does and how it does it. The process kind of like sheds light on all the things that are being that are being approached, right? That's the whole thing. It kind of like highlights what are the structures that exist and how they process the work that needs to be done. And by doing that, by kind of following up on the process and looking at the process from the process's perspective, you get to see basically where the friction lies, where value is being lost, or at the very least where time, effort is being wasted. Jess? All right. Organization's process define what the organization does and how it does it. Individual initiatives may improve specific processes and sub-processes, breaking down larger, more complex processes into smaller chunks, which are sub-processes, allowing business analysts to better understand what each process is doing and how to optimize them. What about the depth of change? Business analysts use BPM frameworks to facilitate the analysis and deep understanding of the organization's processes. BPM frameworks are set descriptions of process. So the depth of change is basically like, since it revolves around the effectiveness and efficiency, right? Since it's revolving around the effectiveness and efficiency of a process or the value generated. So there are a set of descriptions of processes for a generic organization, specific industry professional area, or a type of value stream. So BPM frameworks define particular levels of processes through the organization's process architecture. All right, so process architecture, that means what they're doing is we also do have when we're working on the architecture, we're also like creating a process from A to Z of all the things that are connected to it, right? But anyways, as an example, business analysts perform supply chain analysis as means of evaluating specific processes in an organization. And notice here supply chain analysis. Why? Because it's kind of like starts somewhere and ends up somewhere else. And supply chain analysis doesn't mean there's a product. There's a product going outside to users, but more, it's not just logistics. But if you think of actions and tasks as a logistical thing, then slowly you kind of like move there. Analysis of the supply chain is frequently conducted by decomposing group-level processes into individual subcomponents, and then decomposing these down to individual performing specific tasks. Business tasks involved with business processes management are frequently engaged in continuous improvement activities, as they are often the ones most familiar with BPM. Again, like business analysts are normally kind of like, just there watching how things are being done, documenting them, and then going to the people doing it and telling them, hey man, this is how you've been doing things, so let's try to do it this way or that way or whatever. The goal of BPM is to improve operational performance, effectiveness, efficiency, adaptability, and quality. And to reduce cost and risk, business analysts frequently consider transparency into processes and operations as common core value of BPM initiatives. Transparency into processes and operations provides decision makers a clear view of the operational consequences of previous processes. So like that's it. Like what we're doing is we're sitting there, we're documenting what's going on, and we're going like, hey, this is how you're doing things, a clear view of the processes, and we're following the performance, the effectiveness, efficiency, adaptability, and quality to reduce the costs and risks. So we are shedding light on the process. We are unbiasedly shedding light until we eventually kind of like, so we have to first see the process, show the people the process, share the process with the people, and then after that, basically, like once they approve that this is what they're doing, because they might not approve, and they might not approve because something you've missed or something that they basically like refuse to accept. And so as you do that, you kind of like highlight, you ask them a question maybe like, okay, how do you think you're doing this? And they would answer, and then you kind of like follow them and see how they do it, and then maybe you'd understand more about what they see versus what's actually happening, and you kind of like give them a result or give them a way for them to kind of like engage. Amazing. Business analysis efforts frequently begin with the identification of a business need or customer needs, and generally referred to as BPM drivers. Their drivers are cost reduction initiatives, increasing quality, increasing productivity, emerging, notice they're all performance. It's process, so it's performance. Emerging competition, risk management, compliance initiatives, competition. They need to do better. Performance. Next generation process automation, core system implementation, innovation and growth, post-merger and acquisition rationalization, standardization initiatives, major transformation programs, establishment of a BPM center of excellence. Increased agility and speed or faster processes. The delivery approach for BPM initiative across organization ranges from a set of tactical methods focused on improving individual processes to a management discipline that touches all processes in an organization. The main purpose of process transformation is to help organizations identify, prioritize, and optimize their business process to deliver value to stakeholders. Organizations conduct periodic assessment of key processes and engage in ongoing continuous improvement to achieve the sustained process excellence. And the success of BPM can be measured of how well the BPM initiative aligns to objectives set for BPM and organizations. Periodic assessments of key processes and engage in ongoing continuous improvement to achieve the sustained process excellence. Of course, we are periodically checking so that we are consistently doing better. And there are several mechanisms that can be used to implement BPM, business process re-engineering. We look at the process and we re-engineer it, and we re-engineer it from a different angle in order for us to redesign it differently. Evolutionary form of change, methods that have overall objectives set for the process, and then individual changes aimed at bringing sub-processes in line with those goals are implemented. Substantial discovery methods are used when organizational processes are undefined in the documented version of the process, so we have to go and discover them. Different from the actual process in use, substantial discovery is about revealing actual processes and is a method of organizational analysis. Process benchmarking, we compare it to different processes on different organizations. And performance metrics and industry best practices. Dimensions typically measure our quality, time, and cost. Specialized BPMs applications are designed to support BPM initiatives and execute the process models directly. These applications are tools that automate BPM activities. Often the organization's processes are required to be changed to match the automated approach. Process improvement approaches can be categorized in terms of their point of origin and whether their solutions are primary organizational, people-based, or technological, IT-based. Organizations can better understand the process improvement methodology as mentioned and as previous paragraph to apply based on the following organizing principles. You know, the way they write in this fucking book kind of puts you in a trance, because I'm reading and my mind is going everywhere. It's remembering fucking decisions I made. One of the things was like, this is way too complex, and you should only do that when you have like 15, 20 different like teams that are like working within your organization. But yet I kind of like was reprimanding myself, because what I do is I kind of like start any fucking project I have with a whole lot of just kind of like fucking constraints or details or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, process improvement approaches can be categorized in different ways. Points of origin, whether their solutions are primarily organizational or technological. Organizations can better understand the process improvement methodology as mentioned in the previous paragraph to apply based on the following organizing principles. There's a top-down approach. Initiatives are typically orchestrated from central point of control from senior management and spanning down implications, targeted end-to-end process in major parts of the business, going all the way down to people that are kind of like in charge. A bottom-up approach is basically like, a bottom-up approach is more of a first principles thinking, because you're kind of looking all the smaller parts, and by doing that you connect them and you'll be able to re-engineer it or connect them differently. Initiatives are typically tactical approaches to improving individual processes and departmental workflows or sub-processes in smaller parts of the organization. There's people-centric initiatives where the principal change is to activities and workflows in the organization. There's IT-centric, which is initiatives frequently focused on process automation. And ultimately, your major assumptions are that processes are generally supported by information technology systems, as in like software, and development of those systems is not covered by most BPM methods. Business analysts may suggest additional business requirements based on the existing IT systems. Right? If you're working with software, you have to consider software. BPM initiatives have senior management support. The business analyst may be involved in suggesting additional business requirements based on organizational strategy. Always, BPM systems require a tight integration with organizational strategy, so most methods do not tackle the development of strategy, which is outside the scope of the perspective. I think here what they're trying to say is basically when we're working with BPM systems, we might need like training and other stuff. And lastly, BPM initiatives are cross-functional end-to-end on the organization. We're always assuming that when we're working with a process, it's impacting somewhere else and we have to figure it out. Yay, business analysis scope, look at that. All right, business analysis scope. Enterprise-wide change sponsor, enterprise-wide BPM initiatives are typically started by executive focusing on value and outcomes and then linking these strategic objectives. So it's when you're looking at a process, you're kind of looking to shift the whole thing. BPM initiatives are frequently triggered by an external situation which generates a business need, or an enterprise business analysis practices are applied to develop a business case for a BPM initiative. Process improvements are typically initiated or at least managed by a process manager, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, what they're saying is, like, when you're looking at processes, you're looking at the whole thing, you're not looking at one thing, and something triggers it from the outside, and somebody is in charge of it. That isn't the case with everything we do, right? And what are the targets? Well, the customer, the regulator, the process owner, the process participants, project manager, implementation team. The key stakeholder of any BPM initiative is basically like, to do better for customers, right? For the external customer. But internal customers are also considered, since BPM is customer-centric by nature. It's a process management, right? A regulator, a stakeholder in any BPM initiative due to evolving requirements towards compliance and risk management by some organizations. Regulators may trigger a BPM initiative due to changes in regulations or some concerns for public safety, transparency, equal opportunity, or non-discrimination. There's also a process owner. The key stakeholder in any BPM initiative is basically like the person who said, yeah, let's do this. Authority to make the final decision regarding any changes. Is also responsible for measuring the process performance. Process participants, stakeholders who directly or indirectly participate in the process being evaluated. These participants define the activities of the process in order to ensure that the interests of process participants are met. Process manager, basically the person who's managing the initiative, and it's accountable for its delivery and driving decisions. Project manager works as a team, including process analysts, process owners, and process designers. And then we have the implementation team, which converts the plans for the BPM initiative into functioning business processes. The success of a BPM initiative is the ability to integrate all functions that meet the needs of the customer. Amazing. What's the business analyst's position? He's the process architect or the process analyst as a designer, or the process modeler. So he either basically like architects responsible for modeling, analyzing, deploying, monitoring, and continuously improving business process. A process architect knows how to design business processes and how to enhance these processes, either manually or automated business processes execution on a BPM platform. Process architects address the guide and decisions of what process knowledge, methodology, and the technology is required to meet the objectives of the organization with respect to a particular initiative. The architects enhance and transform business processes into technically enhanced and executable process templates. Depending on the BPM initiative, process architects may be focused on managing business performance or mapping technology to business operations. Wow, process architects. Anyways, that analyst basically has to be able to kind of like deliver. And when he's architecting, he kind of has to approach it from an architecture's perspective. Are responsible for developing and maintaining standards and repository documentation and reference models for products and services, creating the KPIs, critical success factors, and then engage in the process analysis transformation initiatives, right? They also have to be there as people implement their fucking like design. An analyst or designer has detailed process knowledge, skills, and interests. They are experts in documenting and understanding process design along with performance trends. The analyst designers have an interest in business process optimization to increase overall business performance. This goal requires an understanding of the detailed process that includes performance and necessary analysis for process optimization. They perform analysis and assessment of as-is processes, evaluate alternate processes, design options, and make recommendations for change based on various frameworks. And the modeler captures the document's business both as is to be the process and to be the process. So like the process is how it is and how it's going to be and everything in between. And the process modeler is frequently a process analyst working on a document process or implementation of support and information technology system. So this is basically the BPM analyst role in a BPM initiative. This is what the analyst does: project manager, business analyst, process analyst, designer, and process modeler. These are the three in between, and then the owner, and then go to the functional manager, and then the staff. The initiative starts here. What do you want? How can we do it? And then from the owner, functional manager, staff, and this kind of becomes the feedback loop here. Yay. These three, the last three at the end. The business analysis outcomes of the business analyst working with the process model. You get the business process models, the business rules, process performance, because you're documenting shit, right? And like, what are the rules of the process? What are the constraints of the process? What is the performance measures of the process? What's the decision and what's the process performance assessment? Business process models start at the highest level from an end-to-end model of the whole process and can become as specific as modeling specific workflow. Building process models serves as both the output and the standing point of the analysis of the process. They are divided into current state as is and future state to be models. Current state models portray the process as it currently functions without any improvements. Future state models, what process should look like after improvement options. And then in between, the benefit of developing the current state model is to justify the investment of the process by enabling the business analyst to measure. So like, I have to show you what it's going to look like in the future, but you need something to compare it to now. Transition models describe the interim states required to move from the current state process to the future state process. Amazing. Now, business rules. Business rules, state guides, processes are all intended to assert business structure or control over behavior, or control the behavior of the business. Rules are the constraints, right? Did they not mention constraints? The rules are identified. The rules are identified requirements, solicitations, and process analysis, and focus on business calculations, access control issues, right? Like, if this is the process, then we have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this way. You can't do it that way, and that's where the rules kind of play, because if you do it that way, you might lose time, or if you do it this way, you might kind of like waste somebody else's energy or waste resources. Classifying business rules can help decide how they be best implemented. Business rules analysis provides insight to how the business functions and how the processes contribute to meeting the business goals and objectives. So the rules kind of like describe that, right? Because you can't do this because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe it's easy for people to kind of understand the process from the rules that kind of like restrict it. They analyze the analysts basically analyze the reason for existence of the business rule and study its impact on the business process before improving and redesigning it. Rules may, when appropriate, be mapped to individual processes through decisions they are influenced unless they are related strictly to the performance of the actual process. Great. Process performance measures. Process performance measures are the parameters that are used to identify the process improvement opportunities, basically KPIs. Their measures are defined and deployed to ensure that the processes are aligned to the business needs and strategic objectives of the organization. Measures can address many aspects of the process, including quality time, cost, agility, efficiency, effectiveness, responsiveness, adaptability, flexibility, customer satisfaction, velocity, variability, visibility, variety, rework, and volume. Right, like, you know, if you're building a process, you kind of have to like look at all the different aspects of the process and see what the fuck's going on. Many of the process performance measures seek to measure the effectiveness and efficiency of the process, as well as the degree in which the process goals are achieved. When deployed across the business, process development measures can indicate the maturity level of a process and culture in the organization, and generate a shared understanding of process performance across the organization. Performance measures are keys to defining service level agreements where the organization provides service for their customers. So, well, yeah, well, when it comes to the measures, you're kind of like that's what you do. That's how you objectively check yourself, right? And that's how you kind of like create that relationship between the actual vision, which is subjective, to the actual object. Business decisions are specific kind of task and activity or business processes that determine which set of options were acted upon in the process. Decisions must be made using a task or activity because it's a process, it's a decision-taking process, often with a gateway or branch in the process. Decisions may be manual or automated or modeled independently or best described using business rules. Some decisions are based on rules, some decisions require management's approval. And process performance assessment. The success of any BPM initiative relies on the intention and capacity of continuous measure and monitor the performance of targeted businesses. Processes, the assessment can be static and documented with assessment report and scorecards, or dynamic and be delivered through dashboards. It provides necessary, like, okay, so the performance, all the KPIs, all the decisions, all the results, all the response, it could be through dashboards, it could be through scorecards, it could be documented through just kind of like weekly updates or something. It provides necessary information makers of the organization to deploy and adjust resources in order to meet process performance goals. Well, that's basically it, right? And then 15.3, framework and methodologies, techniques. So this is part one. Let's go to part two.